Welcome back, fellow armchair generals. This is Gamer1745 here with my continuing playthrough of Hearts of Iron 3 with Black Ice 9.11, and of course we're playing as Japan, so let's continue this. Yeah, this was pointed out to me again. I'm sorry, I forget, and the previous one that I forgot was Greg, who talked about supplies, transports, convoys, and stuff, and making those. And I don't know if it was Tom Wushu or Darkstar or whatever. One of you guys was very much commenting that some of our troubles of dealing with stuff will be over once we free up all of these units in the crushing this pocket. And absolutely right, we will have a much better situation once we do that. Now, like I had missed for a long time, this the reason I didn't send it over to the other place is because it is a Marine unit, and so we got that, and then we've got two more over here. And I was just looking at the stats. It would be so much better to remove this unit while doing the invasions. So yeah, I'm planning on getting rid of the horse transport. They'll move slower, but we're gonna, and I don't know if he's going to be in the next invasion because obviously we're grinding up, or well, not grinding, but reinforcing up. So but we're going to remove the horse transports, and then just as soon as we get a port, we'll just bring them in via that method and use them, because once they are operating, like I think there's one here, yeah, once they're operating in here, it's much better to have the horse transports. Keeps them mobile. And so I've thought about landing here and trying to push up to, because I know there's a bunch of units here that there. Thought about trying to land here if I can get in there, if it's under defended or not defended, get in fast enough. That would be good, because that here would cut off this leg of units here, and then all we have to do is, I was trying to push into here so that we weren't facing the forts here to then, you know, get here. And but if we got here and here, that would create a nice little pocket for all those units. That's probably what I want to do. But I'm also tempted just to come down here, or even come down here and creating a whole new front, mostly by stripping the last of the okay, good, whatever units out of Japan, which, oh, those are just HQs, so maybe I don't have enough. Nope, we're gonna go with the near Shanghai, because I think all of these are just, oh, they're just HQs. Okay, glad I checked on that. We do have, I think, no, these are mountain HQs up here. Okay, yeah, we've stripped Japan bare of just about all functional units except for garrison type stuff, and these are just the two Marine Corps units there. So yeah, things will change, or will improve once we get this pocket done, and I think we'll hold the pocket, but it's going to be a fight, and we're fighting here. So let's continue that. Oh, one there, good. Well, you support that attack because we're pushing some down here, in just so they don't have a free hand in attacking everywhere. Germany has decided on solution of Austria, union with Austria. Okay, so now they've gotten a big old country. Medium armored designs has advanced, which allows us to build armor and armored battalions and armored support and all of that stuff, and research spearhead doctrine and armored HQs and three-man turrets and all that good stuff. Okay, mentioning the three-man turret, armor, heavy armor, infantry tank. Well, okay, it'll affect our infantry tanks. Yeah, I guess most light armor. We would consider the M3 Stuart's light armor. Those were 2-man turrets. The British tried to cram a 3rd man in, didn't work really well. Panzer IIs, Panzer Is, obviously, which Panzer Is are really tankettes, not really light tanks, but yeah, tankette is a thing with a machine gun, you know, a tracked thing with a machine gun on it. Panzer II makes light tanks because 20mm is considered a cannon, and the Czech tanks, which the 35Ts and the 38Ts, yeah, they're sort of medium light in the 1941-42 sense, medium in the mid-30s sense. But yeah, when they mostly mid-30s tanks did not have 3-man turrets, it was sort of the Germans pushing that. So yeah, so it'll only affect our medium tanks if we research that right now. But let's come down to strategies. They did say spearhead doctrine, which is not until 1941 is it good to research, so we might do it in 40, but not just yet. Superior firepower needs assault concentration. That allows us to do 1 more brigade. And secure, and we're going to this is to research 3, and that needs to get to 3. So if we do that, that will help us with getting better brigades. Okay, you've convinced me. Armored support choices. Okay, let's do that. Let's take a quick look. Okay, armored support brigade, so that's all of this. We'll get 4 opportunities to have particular, I think they'll still do a bunch of general things, but to have sort of some particular improvement traits for armored support. I think we'll probably just do light armor. I'm looking here. Well, also because some of these are just too big and we don't get to the bottom of the list. But I'm looking for things that cost more in production here if they affect. You see supply, consumption, and fuel consumption. I don't even know if I'm going to build any of these. Now, if we're not going to research, well, we researched level 1. If we're going to research more of light armor, it'd probably be better to have light armor. I'm going to let this just hang because I don't think we need to deal with anything right now on that. And look into it because, like, you don't want to do assault guns there if I'm not going to be researching assault guns, and I don't see a good reason to research assault guns for it as Japan. Not that it wouldn't be nice to have them, but we already have infantry tanks, which is not the same thing, but a similar thing. Similar role, at least. They're trying to counterattack again. Just wish we could get their capital. Okay, that looks like. We'll pull those out of the line. pull those out of the line, and we'll send those guys in. These guys can come out too. Get them a little more organized. And they're here. Okay. Well, let's push on into there. We'll actually make our front line more simple in holding. Okay. Marine Division, get on. And everybody come over here. We'll actually come over here and stay. Okay, I looked at this unit here. It's small enough, and looked at this elite light infantry support unit, and that would be a good addition. Really help with invasions. And again, I'm going to take off that horse transport before the next invasion. Transport ship holds advance, and which allows me to get the long-awaited landing craft flotillas to be able to build. Okay. I think we're going to stop here and stop here. Not that we have to, but I think the two attacking things there will continue well enough that they were supporting. Okay, close air support pilot training has advanced. Don't really know how good I would call it. Japanese fighter pilots, their training was, at least in these early stages, was excellent and really good. And so yeah, they're good pilots, you know, the close air support, but I don't really know how well trained and organized for close air support. I'm sure many of you have played flying games, you know, like sort of like War Thunder, and you know, whether you're doing the dive bomb thing coming, you know, out of the sky and trying to pull up in time, or the sort of more horizontal or strafing type bombing runs, they're all pretty tricky, but that's part of what we're talking about here. Doing that well. But we're also talking about ground target identification, because, you know, people in real life don't have little red things around them saying, hey, I'm a target. You know, so not to hit your own troops and how to do it. And it's not just the forward air controller. That's part of it, and that's someone talking back up to you and dealing well with that. But here's where actually this is tactical air commando, forward air controller, frontline target focus. I'm not exactly sure. Ground fighter control, radar, electronics, at least one. Okay, well, let's see. How are we doing with radar? We can do radar now, and you know how much I love radar. Yeah, we're just dumping all of that. We need we're barely even on enough. That. What, we just won here? Here. No, I don't know. Where did we just win? Somewhere here. Maybe it was a counterattack against this group. We give them a lot of money for fuel. No. Well, it looks like we're something of a disadvantage, but we're plowing through them slowly but surely. So we're going to keep that up. Got a bunch of these guys. Oh, we need to move the support units forward. Yeah, we'll send you here. Okay, revolt risk. Okay, that's where these guys are to go. Yep. That. No. Council, you think you're attacking somewhere? No, don't attack anywhere. Come here peaceably. If that's the best path, you think so? I have my doubts about that, but no, maybe a bit more here because we're going to eventually advance forward, and we'll need to have our military police. Okay, wanted to this guy here who has double recon but some light armor, we'll keep him in until gonna give him a headquarters and gonna give him a mixed support unit. And where did the other one go? Maybe more down here somewhere. No, not this guy. He's he already has motorized support. Somewhere else I saw that has a, maybe it's up here. Not those, I don't think. Man, where was it? I went through all of these and go, yeah, that's where I wanted to send them. No, not the infantry support tanks. We'll get you at a closer HQ. There we go. Maybe these guys, no, they already have motorized support. Trust me, it was somewhere, and I need to find out because I need to start sending them there. Ah, here. That's it. That's it. That's where he was going to go. See, that's a very good spot for him. And though this isn't a very good spot for this guy, we should have some mountain troops or just maybe garrisons to... Yeah, that'd be a good idea. Let's send you guys here. And we'll send along a HQ to give you a little better command and control. And we'll send... Where's another... yeah. Let's send you... Because it's going to be another grind going in after the communists now, so... I'm not going to do that, at least I'm not planning on doing that, until I free up these guys, and then we can sort of encircle and come around here. So I want to get my more mobile troops to be a bit more mobile. They're still fairly lightweight, and they were mobile as they punched down here, but now we need to get some stuff to hold the line, which would be good. Ah, well, let's move you into occupied territory. You'll have a little bit of suppression of enemies, of partisans. Is that everything I need to want to get moving? Yeah. Oh, still one more headquarters. Well, let's just... Oh, wow, this is happening fast. January 36. Treaty of Munich. That shouldn't be happening that fast. January 38? No, thank you. Okay, Tibet. Money for... Yes. That's mostly because... Well, we could use the rare materials. I know I've turned down a bunch, but one, it doesn't take any transport ships to get rare materials from Tibet, and it helps our relations with them a little bit. I may decide I need to conquer and take them or something, and we can do the same thing with Saudi Arabia. Okay, you guys... You go onto the defensive, join them. Everybody go on the defensive, and you go on the offensive into those militia. You're coming down there. You join the attack. We're still pushing at you with those. But not those. Okay. Well, it looks like they're going to be successful, so you push into there. Okay, good. And we got a tech that has a little too long of an effect, camouflage designs. Now, I was asked, and I think it was the German game, why I wasn't researching this so early. Partially because, at least in the World War II sense, Germany early on didn't do a lot of camouflage stuff. And then, and as I'm saying this, I'm absolutely wrong about it, because they did. Because they painted their vehicles gray to hide in the shadows of trees. Because they knew that if they stuck them out, you know, in the field, whatever they painted them, you're going to see them. So they, you know, painted them instead of going green like the American and the British did, two different colors until the Americans were sending so much equipment over to Britain. Britain sort of adopted the American stars and the American paint colors schemes, but you know, painted the vehicles gray to hide under the trees, you know, from aerial observation and that kind of thing. And they wore field gray uniforms for basically the same reason. And they did have pre-war some camouflage patterns, but it's mostly just the Waffen-SS that was wearing, in which different patterns. So I sort of delayed doing that, and obviously we're not going to continue this, the 41 technology here. Now the Japanese more so, at least in pictures, it seems more so fairly early on, to camouflage up their tanks. I don't know if you've seen some of the thumbnails I've been using for this and the other Japanese series. They were camouflaging their tanks up, paint jobs, and they were doing a lot more sticking bushes and leaves and things like that in their helmets, where the Germans really didn't do that. They didn't. There's a couple of photos of helmets I've seen with like surviving chicken fence wire, you know, chicken fence kind of stuff that's sort of been crimped down to the helmet to just do the sticking the bushes, you know, and leaves and whatnot in their helmet. And yeah, the sniper guys did do that, but that's fairly rare. Later in the war, they started to wear more and more cloth covers over them with different stuff. And yeah, so they did do some of that, but it was in the German army much more reluctantly. The Japanese were more into the camouflage designs, I would say, on a general trend thing. Now, of course, with a lot of photos, and I've talked about this before, also see them in their camouflage, and then they're waving around red and white flags. You know, the Japanese, either the, you know, the rays coming out, morning sun type, you know, battle flags, or just simply, you know, white field with a red circle in there. I think to some degree that is coming out for the photos, or there's one of those guys in amongst a long line of troops, and they're photographing the one guy in front with the flag because it makes a better photograph. Or there's, hey, we want to take a photograph, pull out your flags. It's probably a combination of that kind of stuff. And part of that is, I'm sure, is in a, you know, bullets start zinging around you, or you're moving up towards the enemy. You're putting those flags away, but you want to carry them, and I think a lot of this is a lack of communication equipment in Japan, whether it's field telephones. So I was talking to Django, and he was sort of surprised how much the Germans used them. I was sort of pointing out, I didn't know whether the German armored forces used them, because I know the American armored forces continue to use field telephones up until the end of the war. Now, of course, it wasn't a for the American Armed Forces, it wasn't a tank platoon running a field telephone back to his higher command. I knew that, and I know that. But divisional headquarters, be they armored divisions or, and I think this is also true, but they're still field telephones. Divisional headquarters, definitely in the U.S. Army, continued to use telephones up until the end of the war because various conditions, including just literally weather, and some of it I think is solar activity, intensifies and puts up electrical interference on some days, and so it may not be seen, and it may look like a clear day and their radios aren't working, as well as just limitations on the radio technologies and other things going on at the time, and that's all part of it, is that they wanted reliable communication, so they continued to string field telephones up to at least divisional headquarters. I don't know how far down, meaning regimental combat team headquarters, battalion headquarters. I'm pretty sure by the time you're getting to companies, at least, you know, American mobile forces are not doing field telephones. They're doing radios. Germany, the German army, all the guys marching behind the horses, not the tank units, were using radios, but they were also using lots of field telephones, including field telephones up near the front, calling in artillery strikes. So forward observers. This is different than in the American Army, at least in most cases, because I've seen these guys in, you know, photos of these guys in trenches that are hastily dug trenches with sort of not just a phone and a handset, you know, with the thing you put to your ear and you put to your mouth, and a little box that it's attached to it. That's one thing. But I've also seen boxes that have sort of like a little switchboard and like 10 or 20 wires running out that are in just, you know, hasty dug holes. So meaning you're not just in some building that's a mile or two behind the front lines, you know, some house or some tent that you put up, and they had radio trucks too, of course. In the infantry units, they also had radio trucks too. But, you know, it's not just like it's far enough back that we're setting up a tent, or we're setting up, you know, because obviously there's places there's no housing, or setting up a, you know, in some house or building, setting up enough of a headquarters that you're using the radio telephone. These are up at the front, and then they, you know, are spidering out to, whether it's to platoons or to companies, but to sort of forward observing elements, as well as talk between, you know, companies or talk between battalions, kind of combat units. In the German army throughout World War II, field telephones were very much used. And so that's sort of a technology that I know that was heavily used in Germany up until the end of the war. I mean, there's a little bit of that in Japan, but I don't think they had field telephones or field radios to that scale. Now, I do know that Japan did have field telephones, absolutely, because I know that some of the various commanders of some of the islands that they're defending the Japanese commanders lost control of their units, the fight for their island, because of the shelling that the Americans did prior to and continuing after the invasion. They cut all the telephone wires. And so even though the Japanese had, in some cases, very, very well built and basically impenetrable bunkers, and that the Allies never really penetrated them, they just sort of burnt them out, you know, poured in enough gasoline and lit them on fire, and everybody died inside. Or a few cases they came in and opened up, and everybody had their shoes off, a toe through the trigger, and a muzzle through their mouth, and had shot themselves in mass because they knew they weren't going to survive. So they just killed themselves. The Japanese did that. So these bunkers were that strong, but they didn't dig the communication wires very deep. They obviously had the troops. A lot of them were Korean labor troops. And they could have dug the wire. So I know they had field telephones, but it's at what scale? And the ability to have them moving around. So you don't have the ability to go, because we're still talking about the flags, I know I'm taking a long time to get there. You don't have the ability to go, stop shooting at me, fools. We're the guys on the hill now, you know, over the field telephone, or radio, but I know they don't have that much radios either, to the other Japanese unit that may be firing at the hill. So what they do is they, they're all camouflaged up with the leaves, and yes, we're still sort of talking about camouflage design. And they assault the hill, and at long distance, little figures moving around. You're not in, and they're all sort of in bland colors, and they're trying to sort of stay in both sides, somewhat less exposed to machine gun fire, to artillery fire, to just general observation. So you got all these troops moving around, and you get to the top of the hill, and you want your supporting unit, whether it's your support company of your or your support platoon of your company, or your support company of your battalion, just maybe them with the mortars and the artillery and the heavier machine gun, to stop shooting at the hill now, or a different unit, entirely different battalion was attacking, say, from a different flank, may or may not be, what levels of coordination, but you want to be able to go, wave the flags, we're here now, stop shooting at us, at a longer range, so that would be observed. So that is part of the reason the Japanese, I believe, carry a lot of flags. Part of the reason goes back to the samurai traditions, in which, at least at some points in the samurai world, every samurai carried a flag on, attached to his back, and then they also the agugashi, or I'm butchering that, I have to look that back up. The sort of the non-samurai warrior types also all had flags on the back of their armor, sticking up with a sort of an L-shaped thing to make sure it was visible, so that everybody could see who they were in the big battles. And so, their house flags and whatever, and so that there's that tradition within Japan as well of personalized flags to the individual and or units. So that's also comes out of their tradition. So you see them raising the flags on everywhere, and everybody's able to break out a flag because lots of people have flags. So it's partially their cultural tradition, my understanding, partially their battlefield use of communications. And I also think it's also used as an intimidation of the enemy, is because take your city gates. A lot of Chinese cities at this time were still walled, sort of 19th century and well before it kind of technology, but hey, walls still stop modern, these big thick Chinese walls still stop modern bullets and slow down artillery bashing through. But once you see some of the major gates that are held by Japan with Japanese flag flying above them, you sort of realize, the guys in the other half of the city realize, they've breached our walls, maybe we ought to get the hell out of here, kind of thing. So it is sort of an intimidation factor in the war as well. So there's all these various things. So we're going to go with infantry guns, I think, now. Yeah, could have just gone with infantry guns instead of giving the talk, but hey. Oh, and the other thing I was asked about, and so I, sort of for role-playing, sort of for history, the other thing which I have never understood and agreed with and know is body armor. So I have never used it. I have no plans on using it. I don't know if the AI will use it. I don't know why it was put here. I don't know if it was put at somebody's request and it got there. I know, unless you're talking the helmet, which is a body armor, obviously, and it's meant to stop, not bullets, and it will stop. It depends on the angle, and you can always see the soldier holding up the helmet with either a big dent in the helmet or a bullet hole in it, and it will deflect, change the trajectory of round. So a round that would have given a glancing blow to the head but crushed the skull and gone all the way through it, but as a glancing sort of thing, it will redirect its trajectory in a different path, maybe still through the helmet but away from the head, or it will stop a bullet after it is spent, meaning it is lost its energy, which could be simply going in a long distance and it's losing its energy. I remember, I guess I could say I've been shot, though that's bullshit. I was hit by a bullet once, would be a correct thing, because I was at a range. It was at a machine gun shooting. They were shooting at, I think, at an automobile and some other rocks, and it was out in it was in the Nevada desert, and whatever. And I feel this sort of against my leg. You may have heard that, and it was like somebody just sort of a light tap, a light stick. I look down and I sort of see down there a spent bullet on the ground. So something, had gone in the entire opposite direction, hits a rock, I don't know, 100 yards away or something like that, and then comes back in my direction and hits me. and I'm standing in a big crowd of people, and I'd make nothing really of it. Then I pick up the bullet, and so, and it's, you know, and all of the bullets are going in the opposite direction. No one was being wild. No one was being crazy. It's just one of the random things, and it's designed that, yeah, there's rocks and other things that will deflect bullets, but by the time it somehow came back at me, it had lost most of its energy. It's sort of like if somebody just sort of tossed, you know, like a 45 caliber or whatever it was, sort of smashed up, I couldn't quite tell, bullet at you, you know, just sort of not thrown it hard, just sort of tossed it at you and you missed the catch or something and it hit you. That's about all I felt. But I sort of knew from the, it came at the front of me, and there was no one standing in front of me because I was at a rope line at the time, and there were only a few people firing guns in front of me out in the opposite direction. So, you know, that's obviously an extreme case of a spent bullet. But, you know, a helmet will deal with that. Helmet's primarily designed to stop fragmentation from artillery shells and other things, because one, they could be above you. That was sort of the key for artillery. And secondarily, it's sort of the part of the head you're sticking out of the trench and looking around with. And if there's artillery fragments going around, that's most likely to where you're being hit. And it's the place that you're most likely to be hit that kills you, where the other similar hits, even if you're all enough exposed, you know, if you're laying down and the shell bursts on above you, you'll just get a few wounds that are survivable in the back of your, you know, body or whatever, but it would have killed you in a head hit. So beyond that, I don't know of them really using any body armor in World War II for ground units, and that's what all these are. The only things I can really think of are like for pilots, you know, flak. That's why they call them to this day flak jackets, after the German word for Fliegerkanon. You know, flak, because that's where it comes from. Because you look at it, it's spelled as the Germans contracted aircraft cannon, Fliegerkanon, anti-aircraft stuff. And they wore, and you can see a lot of you can see it really easily on a lot of the, you know, not tail gunners, but waist gunners on a lot of the bombers, standing there in really heavy flak suits. And some of the pilots, both fighter and bomber and other people, wore these flak vests around them that would wouldn't stop a 50 caliber, not at all, but would stop or slow down a lot of flak and otherwise deadly things. Those are of any sort of mass. So I don't agree with this. So I just ignore it. However much it might help, I just ignore it. And it does slow down speed, which is a penalty too. But so it's just, if you're oh good, we've even got that done. So if you are a power player, or however you want to call that, min-maxer or something, I don't know that it makes entirely good sense to. What are you? You're just defending. Good. Now you're back to attacking. They may counterattack, but we'll see about that. Okay, well, we've sunk a light cruiser out here. Well, let's put him into action. Not that much in the way of combat power, but maybe enough to turn it. 1 and 2, maybe give him a little more experience. And gain some traits, possibly. Okay, and probably, even though I've been talking a lot, we've got this division here. You're going to go to a new division. Battle expert. Okay, Naval Landing Force. Okay. Okay, these guys, we'll leave them here. We're going to remove him, the Yokosuka. Maybe we'll get them back to the right one at some point. And no, not him. Him. Okay, we want to focus just on, yeah, not those guys, but These guys, nope, not the right one. Yeah, it's gonna take. We want it with these guys. These guys will unload them faster. They'll do a faster invasion. So hopefully now that we've eliminated the transports, they'll actually get there faster, or get on the beach faster, so they won't be able to react as quickly. I'm missing. Oh, one guy's already. I gotta get him off the boat. Get these guys off the boat. And then select those. And now I gotta cycle back through this again. There we go. There we go. Now, okay, there's a military police unit there. So maybe we can take that and hold that. So let's do an invasion there. And we will get fire support from these guys, which are pretty big. These guys, I think, are getting defensive. Yeah, they're getting defensive shore bombardment and holding there. Probably this liner still moving around. Okay, recon unit coordination. And since it's 38 and we're in 38, we're going to let that go. Bombers and transports. Okay, well, let's put the bombers here. We'll create a new unit. Here, I looked in between episodes. This will hold up to 60. We also got a bunch of fighters, which really haven't been that necessary. Oh, okay. Oh, not a naval bomber. Here we go. Yeah, that looks good. I think it's still that liner and maybe a few other vessels, I don't know. Oh, I was told that I could redirect this. Okay, I guess I can. I never knew that I could. Okay. Good, there we go. That's where I want to land. Want to get there and get ashore. Because if I get ashore, we have some fortifications that we can hold out and we can get supplies. So I think I can hold versus most of these militia types that are sort of have been escaping from there or wherever. And we'll get this southern bit of this pocket closed up if we can win this battle and whatnot before they are. Oh, we stole some American blueprints finally. Medium bomber prototypes to level 2. Okay, so that is done before we got all the rest of that done. Very good. So our medium bombers will be better. Okay, money for fuel, crude oil. Who do I want to make more powerful? We'll do the Soviets. We'll do that. And I think we can hopefully get shorter transport communication lines. Okay, well, both of these are doing well. I guess you can go there. go there to keep. Okay, we've won out here. Again. They keep slipping in more units as we're grinding them down. Okay, well. Let's counter-strike there. Okay, they've won, okay. So we don't need to go there. And finally these guys, in their attack here, freed up these guys to attack there is what I've been wanting to do. Okay, okay, we're still at the 50-50. Okay. Revolt risk. Okay, I'm willing to take the supplies and money hit more than I want to do the recruiting time or the organization more, so we'll do that. Okay, now you guys can attack. And they are sort of beat up, yes. Do we have any of my HQs that made it yet? No, they're still coming around. In various locations, I guess. I don't know. Militia attack there. They're not supporting that attack. They should support that attack. And more skirmishes out at sea there. Come on, guys, get ashore. Defeat these guys. Customs police. Ah, customs police. I'll talk about this. I know we've talked about a lot here. The customs army. Well, I don't know. Maybe I'm mistaken. But is that part of the tax army? There was a tax army in China. To my understanding, the tax army was not an army that went around and collected taxes from the peasants or from the businesses. What they did do was go around to the various provinces and collect the taxes that the provinces had collected and get them successfully to the central government. And I'm not even going to try right now. There were 2 military academies. Oh, maybe I will try Wangpeng or something like that. I'm probably butchering. There were 2 main military academies in China. They were rivals, and to the point, I believe, particularly during the Civil War era, they were on opposite sides, meaning they fought each other, you know, or their graduates did. Not that the academies fought, but, you know, this isn't rivalries like the Army-Navy rivalries in, you know, football or something. These were different sides of conflicts. And to get anywhere in the Chinese military hierarchy, you had to basically gone to either one of these military academies. If you were an officer who didn't, and there were, I do believe, officers who didn't go there, you weren't going to get very far. You know, not that you weren't of either the right social status or the right whatever to get an officer's commission. You just weren't going to play the patronage game and get very far in the Chinese army. I'm sure there are exceptions to the rule, but that is the general rule. One of these 2 academies. And these 2 academies aren't necessarily very good. I don't know much about them. But I know they're not necessarily very good. That doesn't mean they're terrible or awful, just don't know much about, and they don't have very great reputations. There is another group of trained Chinese officers. Starting sometime after World War I, there is a program in the U.S. to get Chinese, mostly men of course, but Chinese people educated in America. And so various schools went through, you know, got Chinese students to come to America and get educated in various fields. one of the schools that took Chinese students was the Virginia Military Institute, the VMI. That is a very famous military school, a military school you can graduate from, even while most regular officers were going through West Point. You could go through the VMI and go straight into the United States Army as a commissioned officer. It is that much of a storied past. It is still going to this day. Of course, it supplied a great number of officers, though all the sort of famous Confederate officers of the Confederacy were West Point graduates. The VMI was another major school there. One of the teachers before the Civil War was Stonewall Jackson. Terrible teacher. Terrible teacher. But he was one of the teachers there. He knew and understood warfare and tactics and combat very well. And he would give lectures. And this is why he was a very terrible teacher. So he would give a lecture on it. And if a student raised his hand to ask a question, and it was, regarding the lecture, he would stop, what, okay. And he would go back and repeat the section over again and then continue, not stating anything different than his prepared lecture that he prepares and writes. I've never read one of his lectures. I don't know if they, because I know he was basically reciting the stuff that he wrote. So I don't know if they were good lectures on tactics or whatever he would, because I think that was mainly what he was teaching was tactics. He had a very good reputation in the Mexican-American War, is how he got that training commission. And you just go back and repeat it and then continue on. Basically, no discussion, no ability to interact with students on any sort of good teacher ability. So he may have had all the great knowledge and may be writing great lectures, but he was a terrible teacher. Teaching itself is a skill. You can have a great general and be a terrible teacher. You can have a great general who's also a great teacher. They are two different things. And you can have a great teacher who knows strategy, tactics, and whatever, and would be a terrible general. I'd sort of call potentially an armchair general, because I can sit here and teach you about tactics. I have never been a general, so I don't know if I would be a good one, actually being in, whether it's in combat or sitting back at the headquarters getting the reports of what's going on with my troops and in a real time making good decisions that win battle. I have no idea whether I would do that well, and I don't have all of the intermediate skills, went through ROTC in university, but so I have some levels of a platoon leader, as we call them in the U.S., skills. Didn't actually exercise them in, actually going in the Army. Because Bill Clinton was president, and I did not want to go into his Army. So I decided not to fully complete my ROTC and go into the Army. There were other things, reasons why I chose not to as well at the time. But so I have some of the skills, but I don't have the general skills. But I have, I think, and many people listen to it, skills to lecture on, to teach about tactics and strategies, and that concept. That does not mean I would do them well in the field. And so you can have people that write books, people who can, give lectures, talk about this kind of stuff, and do it very well and train people, but sometimes they just may have never had the chance to do it in wartime. When was the last time Sweden was at war? 1960 something, when they sent a bunch of troops down to the Congo, as part of the UN. But, so unless you were part of that expedition as a Swedish soldier or officer, you haven't had the chance to practice your skills. We don't know. There may have been a guy who would have outdone Patton, Rommel, Guderian, Napoleon, Alexander the Great, but we don't know if he was born at the wrong time in Sweden to ever show those skills. That's why I talk about armchair generals so much here, because that's what I consider myself, an armchair officer. I know a lot. I think I'm pretty good at, as we can see, reasonably good at these war games and doing it, but that is different than doing it in real life. So, back to VMI. VMI is part of this program that takes Chinese. So they train a bunch of Chinese officers. They get back to China. Nobody wants them because they didn't go to one of the 2 military academies in China. Well, there's this tax army, and it is part of the official Chinese nationalist army, but it's called the tax army, or words to that effect in Chinese, I'm sure. And again, they're mainly responsible for moving large sums of money around China, and they have significant military units. I mean, divisions. These aren't military policemen, because customs is what sort of got me into this, as opposed to just the police terms. And I don't know if customs is part of the tax army or not. But so you get this tax army, and at some point, one of these VMI graduates either gets in charge of it or gets fairly high up in it, and so he starts collecting VMI graduates from America. And so they actually do very well. They're a very well trained element. Now they're smaller than the larger scale. Again, they have divisional size units, but they are smaller than larger scale Chinese army. So they are able to I'm going to have to see about this. I hope this is going to... Yes, we're back. So they have, they're smaller than the large armies of China. And because they're sort of the tax army, they get choice on weapons, equipment, training levels, personnel. So they're sort of an elite unit, elite elements within the Chinese army. Well, at least one of the tax army divisions is one of the units that was moved to Burma to protect the Burma Road, that then escapes out of Burma into India. So it's over here. So there's, I think it's 2 or 3 divisions or something, or that's maybe what they're reorganized into, in India, and eventually equipped with mostly American equipment. Well, it really threw the British officers, because they would come up to a Chinese officer, at least in some of the divisions, and would start to try to communicate with this Chinese officer. And because being a lot of the Indian Army and Far East officers that were involved in this, they sort of knew what was quite common, was called pidgin. Sort of a baby talks wrong, but it's sort of a simplified version of English with a bunch of Chinese and other words sort of thrown into it. That so if you only knew, say, 100 English words, those 100 English words are probably in pidgin. So it would maybe start to speak to them in pidgin or something, to try to speak to them, because they didn't speak any Chinese. Well, when they get answered back in a nice American Southern drawl, Southern accent, it really threw them, because all the VMI graduates all spoke very good English with a Southern American accent, without it, because they supposedly really worked on it hard to fit in with the rest of the VMI students. And so they spoke with a Southern American accent, not in accented Chinese, not in other things else. And they would always throw, when they first met one of these Chinese officers, because a bunch of them were part of the escape group, and then they also, to some degree, I believe, if I understand from the article that I read, would sort of teach that version of English to their other officers, because not all of the tax army officers or other recruit type officers were of had been trained in America, but enough of them were, so they would speak with a upper class Southern accent, and really would throw them. So that's sort of a little bit about the Chinese tax army as a sort of, it's sort of, I don't want to overstate its separateness, and it may sound like it's they wore the same uniforms, they wore the same stuff, they were part of the same army. It just, they sort of like, you might, I don't know, the Signal Corps or the Engineering Corps, because like if you look at the, jump back to the 19th century, sort of the Engineering Corps within the British Army was part of the British Army, but they wore different uniforms, and for the most part, weren't given military commands, so they had military ranks. Commands is in, commanding a division or commanding a battalion or whatever. But they would be majors and colonels and whatever else. But they were engineers who had more or less minimal military training, because they were sort of military engineers. So that's sort of what the tax army. It was a distinction sort of like that, but one set up much more as a so as a combat type unit. Well, I think this has gone on long enough. I think we're going to end the episode here. I want to thank you all for watching. Thank you for liking the videos if you would, if you haven't already. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Love to see you around more often. And of course, please post questions, comments, corrections, because I know I got some of that wrong. Love hearing from you. See you next time for more Hearts of Iron.